Rama, 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 Hari, Hari.
That was the most unhurried Krishna I ever heard.
Well, now, if you armed 700 or 500,000 Americans with little tiny $15 harmoniums and sent them in against the Viet Cong, you'd probably get better results.
Well,
It's a matter of practical, unnaive politics.
you mean by contrast with the present results?
Well, by contrast with the present, bring down fear, bad feeling, negative approach.
Now, tell me,
Paranoia.
who's paranoia?
This is the world's paranoia, yours, mine, I guess. Certainly, I think Johnson and Rusk's. Certainly Dulles is paranoia.
You said recently that we are becoming a police state, no different from East Europe.
Yeah, I found
East Europe has kicked you out. We never have kicked you out.
Yeah, well, I've had a taste of both, you know. I've been kicked out of, say, Cuba and Prague. And I've been, there have been attempts to set me up for arrests by the New York Narcotics Bureau for my political speech against the marijuana illegalization laws.
How do you know?
Well, a friend of mine, Hunky, who's an old-time junkie from way back,
Yeah.
And a very interesting literary figure, he appears in Kerouac's books occasionally, was busted in New York a couple years ago, and the police threatened to throw the book at him unless he brought some pot to my apartment so that they could, under the Rockefeller no-knock law, bust into my apartment and bust me. Well, Hunky called my brother, who's a lawyer, and I went and complained to my representative, Farbstein, Congressman Farbstein in Washington, Congressman Jolson from Patterson, and went to Senator Kennedy's office and got a story in the Times about it, and got a story in the Washington Post, so that finally I had enough, energy to run around to protect myself by making enough stink about it. The same, the people, the detectives involved with that was a detective imp in New York who was later busted for pushing junk. That.
So there's hope for everybody.
Well, no, it's hopeless unless the public realizes that, for instance, in this area of narcotics, of drugs, marijuana, the police have been acting illegally all along, and the police have been running a police state in that area, which is causing immense social damage.
You mean acting illegally by what? By not running people in who, in fact, are violating the law?
Well, the police themselves have been peddling a lot of dope in New York, particularly. There was a whole series in the New York Times dealing with that.
At the instructions of Cardinal Spellman?
Well, now, I don't know what Cardinal Spellman was on. No, I presume Spellman was not. I think probably Spellman was very much morally against people smoking pot unless they do damage to themselves socially, and so he would prefer that they go to jail.
No, I do think that.
You know how many people are in jail for pot now?
In the course of loving people, you ought to pay a little attention to what it is that you say. It's rather reckless, rather wanton.
No.
These sort of categorical defamations.
You mean about the police? About the Narcotics Bureau in New York?
You can find police who are crooks. You can find popes who are crooks.
My dear. The whole Narcotics Bureau. Shake up in police shifts 3 top aides in Narcotics Union, February 17th, 1968. The sudden removal of Chief Inspector Bluth and his 2 top assistants stunned many police officers at the headquarters said it was the most dramatic shakeup they could remember in the Bureau.
So what?
Last December 13th, 3 detectives of the Bureau's Special Investigating Unit were indicted by a federal grand jury on charges of selling narcotics to peddlers. A trial date has not been set.
Now, wait a minute.
2 city detectives, one of whom was
minute.
indicted this week by federal grand jury on charges of selling drugs, were charged in a civil lawsuit yesterday with stealing $2,783 from a suspect during a heroin raid. March 7th, 1960. 2 captains, a lieutenant, and a sergeant have been transferred out of the police department's narcotics bureau for pushing. It's all New York Times the last 3 months.
Yes, well.
So anyway, they try to set me up. That's why I'm trying to get it out there before I get busted.
I hope everybody recognizes what has just happened, you see. We start off by reading a gaudy headline about somebody very high up. He said it twice. Chief Inspector, get that, Chief Inspector, you see. He gets fired, and then you get down to the end of the story, and you find that 3 detectives have been caught selling junk. So he invites you to assume that the Chief Inspector was very likely implicated in the selling of this junk, whereas a much more reasonable implication is that he was
No, he's
precisely fired because he didn't catch these people sooner. So therefore, your attempt simply to reason and that the whole fraternity is involved in this
As
is just
the
unreasonable.
department continues to investigate charges that the Bureau is riddled with corruption.